Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Elaine. So we are so sorry that we are just a half an hour delayed. The live recording didn't work. It doesn't matter. I mean, who cares? Just half an hour in the grand scheme of things. So we're sharing this video now with half an hour delay. Never mind. How are you, Elaine?
I am very well in a very rainy Switzerland. After many days at 30 degrees, it's now tipping it down, which is much needed, I have to say. And how are you? How's it in sunny London?
Well, it's sunny. No, it's not sunny at all. It's a bit murky. It's, back to school kind of weather again. And but we make do. It's fine. I've just got my wellies on. You can't see, but
It's festival time.
it's quite steady. It's quite steady, and it's decent compared to other places in the world that have flooding and stuff and
Yeah, exactly.
storms. No, right. So let's just maybe share with the people who are bringing the coffee and the toasties right now. What we're doing. We've been since March. We just let's have a little chat just to catch up. And then we've been chatting every Saturday morning for an hour or so. Oh, and every other Saturday, giving us some free co-mentoring, co-coaching, co-thinking, co-ranting.
Yeah,
co-swearing.
Yeah. Which we're not allowed to do now.
And I think it's nice because it gives us a sort of a longitudinal, there's no study involved in anything that we did, but a longitudinal thread or a sort of
and
we could catch up our projects and how they were developing.
Exactly. And yeah, like I say, we go back, 10 years, if not longer.
Something like that, yeah.
From sort of social enterprise in the UK.
Yeah.
And then this intercepted each other in different times and spaces through those 10 years. And now then this really fantastic conversation as impact women, as rebel girls who speak outside of the box quite regularly, quite often with swear words, but actually in this space of challenging and putting the hand up and going, why is everyone doing that?
Yeah.
Could we not do this instead?
Yeah.
So bringing new perspectives. So that conversation, our lockdown, our confinement conversation over the ether has brought us to this moment.
Sharing the toasties with friends.
Yeah, exactly.
So just give us context, because obviously we're not just talking, we're doing things. Can you just share what you're doing in the real life outside your computer?
Outside of
in a nutshell.
Walls. Yeah, so I'm the founder of an ethical business, a social business called Flow in Action. I've been here in Switzerland 9-ish years, having spent all of my career in London. And Flow in Action is all about the pure energy of creating solutions, social change solutions, protecting the planet. And I particularly work in the space of imagination and creativity as making each of us unprecedented and therefore important as problem solvers, and particularly kids. I look through the lens of wonder in order to generate that connection back to the planet that I believe is living us versus the other way around. Mm-hmm. And what's deeply connected to those things is our well-being and our resilience. So how can we be problem solvers on this journey?
So give me an example of something you've done recently, like you've involved tech, and that was fascinating. I'd like people to know. Kids and Hazoo and things.
And Hazoo. So one of the most recent, which was a lockdown one actually, was working with the Commonwealth Business Women's Network and GSMA and putting a little futures thinking challenge together, which said, what if a mobile phone was a school, but it worked offline? So not everything was online. And just throwing that out there to kids 8 to 18 to say, how would you invent it? And really encouraging them within the parameter that I use. The only rules I've got are no harm to people, no harm to the planet. now come up with anything, because as you know, as a future thinker and strategist, we need the crazy ideas, the ridiculous ideas, or seemingly ridiculous ideas, to stretch and break out of the status quo. And kids are amazing. They are so amazing at this stuff. So that was one thing that's been rolling through, triggered by COVID. I've done lots and lots of futures thinking wonder labs with kids in school. I'm a qualified librarian, which is where all this stems from. This finding our voice. And one of the, I'm going to be launching a Futures Wonder Lab in the libraries in Cheshire East, in which is a county in Cheshire. I come from Cheshire, Middlewich, and launching that there to go into this informal education space. How do we break free of constraints in our thinking, and how do we help kids from marching to actually really coming up with solutions that they could implement, and they could implement now. Stop waiting for us to kind of give them permission and actually create solutions. 2 examples. There are many more, but two that are currently happening at the minute. And you, so I want to throw that back to you, and because your influence is global, in fact, already. Tell me.
Well, I've been working in social entrepreneurship and the various diverse forms and shapes of social entrepreneurship, because they vary from country to country. For the last 20 years, and in Europe, but also in Brazil, and in collaboration with other organizations in the MENA. So that has been a sort of big adventure, and also not just waiting for COVID, but for a long time as well, has been regularly online, which is signing a lot of online programs, and mainly for women. Women come from different backgrounds and have different means and different contexts. And what I love is putting them together so that they learn from each other. And then we demystify the landscape, the ecosystem, and we just coach and train them, and they co-coach each other as well in getting great ideas off the ground and scaling them up or adapting them in different settings, whatever is more relevant. So relevance is that's the guiding star, trying to find relevance, and a bit like nature, doing what's needed at the time when it's needed, with the element or the stakeholders that are needed, and see what accidents and cross-pollination happens along the way. So it's basically the kind of work I do. And I work alongside other actors in the ecosystem, like women in social finance, who also are an interesting bunch of women, and sometimes they're not visible enough. And they're doing a lot of great stuff behind the scenes. So I'm part of a network here, and I'm on a steering group of a network called Women in Social Finance. And we deliberately equip them and connect them so that they make even bigger waves in their respective settings. It's interesting. It's an interesting field. So that's us, Elaine.
And so the things that were really popping up for me there in what you were saying, collaboration, because we can't create these futures that we need to create in social change, social innovation, protecting the planet, if we don't collaborate. Cross-pollination of ideas. We need to be value chains together, and that's only challenging because there's conflict in collaboration, which everyone forgets to mention and forgets to equip people with the skills to do, and we both work on that because it's really vital. And that also means creating these micro moments of positive emotions where we do recognize that we are the value and the breadth and depth of connectivity and collaborating, and looking outside of ourselves to mimic. There's biomimicry in ecosystems or social entrepreneurship ecosystems, and ideas have their right time and space, but also innovation has its right time and space. But it also, we're in this space of, in this session particularly, exploring enchantment. So how can we mimic what nature is doing, has done perfectly for millions and gazillions of years in our systems? How can we get back to that?
You had a quote. I
did, which is incredibly beautiful, from Sharon Blackie and her book, The Enchanted Life, which she says, to live an enchanted life is to be challenged, to be awakened, to be gripped and shaken to the core by the extraordinary which lies at the heart of the ordinary. Above all, to live an enchanted life is to fall in love with the world all over again. And it was so striking for me, because that, I think, is where we're at in terms of climate action. So there's this sense that we are, with tech, with cities, with growth, with the status quo on economics, we're becoming more estranged and separated from nature, instead of realizing we're interdependent with it. We're part of an ecosystem. So I'm going to throw a question to you about enchantment. What would committing to an enchanted life look and feel like to you if you started today, and how could you live it practically?
So let's start. Can you repeat the question, the first part of the question first?
Okay.
What
would committing to an enchanted life look like and feel like to you if you started today? Practically, I guess, is the...
Yes. So it's funny, because I would say, haven't I lived an enchanted life before?
Yes.
And yes. And so the rebel in me was like, yeah, I've been enchanted. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And actually, and actually, when I've been in time of some relative scarcity at some points in my life, but what the way I could hold it together was the little wonders, by observing and noticing the little wonders of the situation, whichever it was.
Yeah.
So there were times where my personal life was a bit hectic, and it hampered on my decision making skills. When you're in time of stress, and you might be the most connected person in the world, and you read books and you studied, or you've learned from people, whatever the context is. And then the stress is so high that you can't make a decision that's good for you, let alone good for others. And through that time, I think that little by little, noticing the little wonders, or the love that we have for others, or even if it's one pet, or one tree, or one grandmother, or a child, or just your neighbor. I think that's the key to finding enchantment. So when I think about enchantment, I'm not necessarily visualizing, Alice Wonderland, or, well, that story is not really, it's a bit grim actually when you think about it. So let's put another example. I'm not, it's not all a Disney-like kind of, twinkle, tinkle, whatever it's called, stars and stuff. No, and enchantment is a bit more humble than that for me. I live in North London, in a place that knows its hardships. I'm privileged, and I live in Tottenham, actually. Not the affluent part of Tottenham, the other way, the other one. And we actually we were crossing. We were on the high road yesterday with my son. He's 10, and he was saying there was an old elderly man in very frail condition. He was in an armchair. He was in the middle of the crossing, which was one of the most dangerous crossings that we have in Tottenham. And we were coming off the bus, and we realized that there's a police car coming up, and there was this man who was in the 3/4 of the crossing, the zebra crossing, in his armchair, eating an ice cream from McDonald's that was just opposite. And he was a bit disorientated, poor man. And 3 police women were trying to discuss and bring him, just convincing to move to safety on the pavement. But he was, and I observed that, and I say, sadly, that's something that happens a lot, and people will with all sorts of complex situation. But that's very visible here in Tottenham. So one can say, well, it's hard to find enchantment in a context like this. And actually, I said to my son, who was like, he asked me, why are there so many things like this here? There are always some things happening here, And I said, well, what you can also see is the police officers coming and just talking, and then just not removing him harshly. And some people were trying to block the situation, trying to block the circulation, so the traffic, and say, less man here doesn't want to move, and you don't know how he would react, so you don't want to as well, that he could harm himself by being just losing it, agitated. I'm losing the words. We all have our moments like this, and so what I'm trying to, so the enchantment for me, the glimpse of love here in this complex situation that was in front of us. I'm not saying that the fact that he was on the crossroad was complex. It was, but the whole problem that when you uncover what's going on here, there's the mental health issue, there's elderly, there's poverty, there's the community that can or can't do or doesn't know what to do, etc. All these things that emerge, and when you see one incident like this, you need to see the whole story behind that. So the enchantment is also to pick up, okay, what are the things that are good and not emerging in that picture, and that we need to preserve or do more of. So that community, that support, and that people, all that support that can emerge naturally from the bottom up and also from the community up. Wow, that was a long answer. The practicality is keeping doing that, and keeping looking at the wonders behind the story.
And it's really important, actually, what you've picked up on, because so I lived in London for nearly 20 years, and I was a North London and an East London girl, latterly Dalston, before it got gentrified. And so many of those incidents are really familiar to me. And the thing that you've picked up on is what we call micro moments. And in Barbara Fredrickson's work from Positive Psychology on Love 2.0 talks about these micro moments, and we have to look for them as well as generate them, and then kind of nanoseconds of positive emotions, of wonder, of looking through the lens of kindness, of looking through the lens of love at the world and the people, and seeing the light in people, in order that you then see the light in yourself, which is when you give, you also receive. So there are some really big, very basic concepts here, and what you're talking about there is there's the lens of, the old man in his wheelchair with his ice cream causing disruption. There's also that alternate, loving his ice cream.
He's loving it.
And and just oblivious, but also the ripple impact of all these beautiful micro moments, people stepping up with kindness and compassion and empathy, which is a hard thing to do at that crossroads in Tottenham, but people did it. And that's a really special it is a, you know, it's full of micro moments, but also in itself, it's a snapshot of humanity being compassionate with each other. And that's, yeah, that's enchantment in itself, which needs to happen more and more in urban situations. And I recall some spindly looking trees in Tottenham as well. And I'm really fascinated about what would happen in urban spaces in terms of cultivating enchantment if we go down this route, which we need to, of regreening cities, when we have this view that when we regreen our cities and towns, we are rewilding ourselves and finding calm, finding our interdependence back with the things that breathe us.
It works if we're not regreen by bringing just plants in pots, because that the greening of cities is actually, it's not a real greening. It's you've got a casket of cement. And then, so first you had nature, and then the cities grew generally around a place of nature that was significant, like a river, etc. And then the cities grow, and then they bring nature back in, but in pots.
Yes.
You know, so there's something we need to break, and like the old man in the elderly man in the crossroad is like, what is the interconnection of all these? So do we need to destroy from the existing cities so that we don't bring back nature as in pots, but as a relevant and a natural ramification? Maybe, you know, maybe it's removing all these cemented forefronts of, you know, because they're causing a lot of harm. I guess that's probably for another episode of ours.
but not least because all that cement is emitting carbon.
Yeah.
So
but I see there's a thread here about the enchantment is a finding. It's not just so that situation is not just like a pot. It's
the roots, isn't it?
It had roots in issues, in beauties, in love, and scarcity, and it has roots in everything. So I think if there's one thing that court brings to me is that the realization that when you see something happen, try to see, I need to understand or to uncover in my own time or in someone's own time, the ramification of what is in the picture, the system behind it, you know. And this is how we probably find reason in the space where we are in this story as well. We are connected in that story as well. We can't just let it go. It's staying. It's not going anywhere. So I was saying to my son yesterday, so you know, there are problems in all the areas that you can go through. Some people live in areas that look more pristine than others. The problems are there, only they're not that visible. In Tottenham, with everything, life is also very much outside and in its diversity. So you see a lot of things, and you see people who are doing well, and you see people who are doing less well, or they're doing less well in some categories of their life, and maybe they're full of love as well. And we see that they're all in there. So you really need to look at people and if it's okay, to start a conversation with them.
Which is in London terms is like you'll get like sheer terror. Like, oh, you're talking.
But we've got to. There's an enchantment in that we've got to try to smile at people, especially when you got a mask on now on the bus or on the tube. So there's a gym to do with you know, or do you have a mask with a smile on it, and the people talk, and it starts like, you know, they accept you in. A lot of them accept you in that gaze. That's the little enchantment for today.
And I just want to bring this back to, because we also put enterprise in here, and and so for me though, these are the building blocks of entrepreneurial mindset, where there's scarcity, there's innovation, there's problem solving. And what thrills me and I love about social entrepreneurship and social innovation is that we look for those patches of concrete, we look for the patches of desert and ground, and we plant seeds there. That's what social entrepreneurs do. When somebody says we can't do it, what we do is flip it on its head and go, well, why shouldn't we do it? Why couldn't we do it? What could we do? And then we're in that space of wonder again, which is, well, what is it? What else could it be? Why can't we look at it? What is it? What else is it? And what could it be? They're the kind of building blocks, because wonder is about movement.
So it could be a civic movement as well, or even if it's a movement of one or two.
Yeah.
So sometimes I don't want to equate social entrepreneurship per se with a business, because it's suitable for some, it's not suitable for everything, for everybody, and sometimes it just isolates people. But I think that when you got a civic
movement,
acknowledgement and movement and action, then that means you've connected with these stories that surround you.
It's a mindset too. It's this, enchantment's about storytelling and myth as well. And there's something again which goes to the heart of futures thinking, which is we can't predict the future, but we can unfold it. And that's what a story is. And what we're doing, and what I think social change is about a mindset which says you can write your own story here. And here's the ecosystem around you to help you to do that, and to open and blossom and plant. It's planting a garden.
Wow, Elaine, food for thoughts. I'm going to butter my toasty with these thoughts.
Jam. Got to have jam on it.
Put a jam and butter.
What's your preferred jam?
I take anything that I find in my fridge.
Without mold.
I take my friends give me some leftovers. I don't like that marmalade. No, I didn't like before, but I'll have it. Because I can't bear it. I can't have any of my girlfriends throwing half a pot of jam. Are you mad?
No. This is something that happens in the tourist resort above my head, literally on the top of the mountain, is when the cleanup goes on at the end of each week. It's pots of jam, and so I'm a collector of jam.
But I'm sure there's an app for that.
An eater of jam.
Yeah. Anyway.
What's one outrageous thing?
We meet again. The outrageous things the outrageous that would be able to do the live stuff in 2 weeks again. Yeah. Same time. Same time,
2 weeks.
Same place. Obviously, maybe there would be a half an hour delay. Never mind. But hey, if some of you have brought their toasties and were a bit less stranded, but still managed to listen to it, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining. And we'll be back in 2 weeks. Bring your quotes. Bring the quote if you want us to chat about quotes or stuff, and have us ponder about them.
Books you love, the books you love, the quotes you love,
Let's have it. And then we'll see. Maybe one day we open up the breakfast table to other people. How cool would that be? Excellent. Definitely. As I'm going to stop the recording now. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.